The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
A long time ago, there was a little green animal hopping through the forest. Now, it wasn't just any kind of a little green animal, it was a frog. And it wasn't just any kind of a frog, it was a wide-mouthed frog. This frog's mouth was so big, it was as big as his whole body. And he was a very, very happy frog. But he had one problem. He was very, very curious, always asking questions of all the other animals in the forest, and they were getting sick and tired of listening to him. But he didn't know that. So one morning he woke up, it was a beautiful day, and he hopped in the forest, and whenever he hopped in the forest, he had this little tiny song he used to sing. Wide-mouthed frog, wide-mouthed frog, how very great it is to be a wide-mouthed frog. Boink! Oh, boink! Something fell down on top of the wide-mouthed frog and hit him right on top of the head. A whole bunch of somethings. He looked up and he saw that he was standing underneath a coconut tree, and a coconut had fallen down and hit him on top of the head. But while he was looking up in that tree, he saw the kind of animal that likes to climb up the tree and swing from the branches. It was a monkey. But it wasn't just any kind of a monkey. It was a mother monkey, and she had 4 babies. So the wide-mouthed frog looked right up at that mother monkey and said, Mother monkey, what do you feed your babies for dinner? Oh, said the monkey. I feed my babies bananas, coconuts, dates, and figs. Would you like to join us? And the wide-mouthed frog said, No, thank you, but have a very nice day. And as soon as he found out the answer to his question, he was happy. And he hopped on down the road, singing his little song. Wide-mouthed frog, wide-mouthed frog, how very great it is to be a wide-mouthed frog. But now the wide-mouthed frog got to the deepest, darkest, scariest part of the forest, and all around him on every side, little animals were running out of the forest, and they were motioning for him to run out of the forest too. But the wide-mouthed frog was so very, very curious that he kept on hopping until last he got back to the deepest, darkest, scariest part of the forest. And he saw a den. And in the den he saw the kind of animal that has a mane and is king of the jungle. It was a lion. But it wasn't just any kind of a lion. It was a mother lion, and she had 4 babies. So the wide-mouthed frog hopped right up to that mother lion and said, Mother lion, what do you feed your babies for dinner? The mother lion said, Roar. I feed my baby squirrels and raccoons and other little animals in the forest. Would you like to join us? The wide-mouthed frog said, No, thank you, but have a very nice day. He started hopping kind of fast out of that deep, dark part of the forest. When he got outside, though, and felt the warm sun pouring down on him, and he realized he was safe. He started singing his little song. You can sing that little song with me. All you have to do is make your mouth as big as you possibly can and widen up your eyes as wide as they possibly can and sing along. Wide-mouthed frog, wide-mouthed frog, how very great it is to be a wide-mouthed frog. Excellent. There's some very big mouths in this room, I'll tell you. Don't you think it's time for the little wide-mouthed frog to go home and see his own mommy and eat his own dinner? Well, that's what I thought. But the wide-mouthed frog was so very, very curious that he kept on hopping. And he made a mistake. For he came to a river. And in that river there was that long green kind of animal with a big wide mouth of its own. And a row of white, shiny teeth. It was a crocodile. But it wasn't just any kind of a crocodile. It was a mother crocodile, and she had 1, 2, 3, 4 babies. And so the wide-mouthed frog hopped right up to that mother crocodile and looked up at her and said, "Mother crocodile! Mother crocodile! What do you feed your babies for dinner?" And the mother crocodile got a great big crocodile smile on her face. And she looked down at that little wide-mouthed frog. And she said, "I feed my babies wide-mouthed frog." "Oh," said the wide-mouthed frog. "He made his mouth as small as he possibly could make it. I didn't know that." And the wide-mouthed frog looked up, and as he was looking up, the mother crocodile bent down, and she said, "Would you like to join us?" And the wide-mouthed frog said, "No, thank you, but have a very nice day." And he started hopping backwards away from that river as fast as his little green legs would carry him. He was so scared that he decided to sing his song to keep his courage up. But he couldn't sing it like he usually did. He had to sing it like this. "Wipe my back, wipe my back. I'm ready to be wipe my back, wipe my back, wipe my back." He kept singing and hopping and singing. Till last he got back to his own house. And his own mommy was cooking his own supper. And he sat down and ate it. It was wide-mouthed flies. His absolute favorite. But he learned a big lesson after that. He was never very, very curious again.
Back in 1990, Jill and I had been living here for about 3 years. Jill decided it was time for us to buy a house. I don't really think that way. I thought we could just rent forever. But we started looking, and we found this little house at the Dented Street, kind of a hobbity kind of house, 2 small bedrooms, and we had 2 small children at the time. It seemed like we could make that work, and it became home. We moved in 1990, almost immediately discovered we're going to have a 3rd child. And now this house is getting tight and it's small, but we're kind of let's make things happen. Let's make it work ourselves. We live there. We start to outgrow the walls. We put a little addition, post and beam addition on. That's a construction style where you have these big beams like the old barns had. And we put a kitchen, living room out and a bedroom upstairs, and this house was the work of our lives for 25 years. We would work on it. We would put the new roof on when we had to. And as we transitioned that old house into our home, one of the things we did with what became the dining room was we pulled the old manky carpeting up and we stripped the floor down to this old yellow pine, not particularly pretty, but solid floor. And Jill stenciled along that floor. On the outside, she stenciled the first and last line of a Windowberry poem. "Whatever is foreseen in joy must be lived out from day to day. When we work well, a Sabbath mood rests on our day and finds it good." Because that's how we envisioned living our lives. You always set the bar higher than you can attain. But that's how we envisioned living. And then Jill put in the middle 3 words in a circle: truly, madly, deeply. And it's one of those things that old married couples say to each other. And it's a title of a really bad Alan Rickman movie put out in maybe the 80s, Truly, Madly, Deeply. But the line stuck with us, and so we would say that to each other, you know, I love you truly, madly, deeply, or TMD, you know, on the way out as our lives kept moving with 3 children and a dog and different things going on. And that became our thing. And it was under the rug in the dining room, so nobody saw it, nobody really knew it was there but Jill and I, and that's kind of how those things are. And then disaster happened. It was January 30th, 2015. It was a cold day. I'd set out an extra heat lamp and a chicken coop. I'd left to go to a meeting, and the lamp had fallen over, and the wind was just right, and the coop caught on fire, and it caught the house on fire, and I get a phone call from Jill saying, the house is on fire, and I drive home knowing I can't get down the road. I drive in and park at the neighbors across the way, and there's just smoke and running and shouting and firemen and wind and cold, and it's just all a blur, and I know this happens to a lot of people, but it was a blur, and in 3 hours it was over, and all of that life's work and all of those memories that were stenciled into our lives were now covered with soot, ashen, and gone. And so we had a disaster, but somehow we avoided a tragedy, and that's really where I want to go with this, and that the truly, madly, deeply were important for us to avoid a tragedy, because the truly part is really important, because it took a long time to realize that this really happened. For days it was, what if I had done this? If only that. If I could turn it back, and all those things, which are never true. What ifs are never true. If onlys are fairy tales we can tell ourselves, and they're hard fairy tales to have that happen, and to accept the truth was hard. And it took a long time. I remember about a month after the fire, we're still living with our neighbors, Hope and John, next door, and I had some tea in the morning on the stove, and had tea, and I went to do a workout at the gym, and once I started running, I couldn't remember if I turned off the stove. And such a panic came over me that I ran out of the gym and got in the same vehicle I drove the same route, went to the same driveway as the day of the fire, got out, saw that the house was not burning. And I remember saying to myself, wow, this is going to take a long time to get over this. And it did. And so that, but accepting the truth was a big part of it, getting over it. And then the madly part is where maybe it gets interesting, in that you need mad people in your lives if you're going to avoid tragedy. And a couple of mad people showed up. First was a storyteller friend, Tom Weekly, who I don't really know. We've just crossed paths, but about 2 or 3 days after the fire, I was over at the house still filling the bird feeders, because I couldn't accept the fact that I no longer lived there. And I thought the birds needed to have food. It wasn't their fault. And Tom calls me, and he talks to me, and he says the only thing that's really worth hearing when something like this happens, he says, I'm sorry. That's about the only thing he really can say. And he offered us a loan of money, for a substantial amount, and I go, you don't really know me, but he offered that. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, Kent, God didn't burn your house down. Now, I'm in the religion business as a minister, and we always want to have an answer to a disaster. We always want to have a plan in place. And so we often say the wrong thing. Like, God did this just to make you strong. God's testing you. All that sort of, well, I don't have the right word that I can use on TV. But Tom said the most important thing to me. He said something mad. He said, God didn't do this. And that's was helpful for me, and I carry that with me. Because sane people want to make you feel comfortable with things, and mad people tell you the truth. The second mad person in my life was a guy named Don, an older guy who was, I knew sort of from our church congregation, a little bit from Camp Fowler. And he showed up when the house was still burning. And he said to Jill and I, said, I'm going to walk with you through this. Now, that's a mad thing to say, because you didn't know where a journey like that will take you. And sure enough, he helped us get a contractor lined up, and then when that fell through, Don ended up being our general contractor, and he put legs to that statement of, I'm going to walk with you through this. He did the mad thing and took on a pretty much impossible project. And he walked with us through that. And the third mad person is my good friend Dan. And everybody needs a guy like Dan in their lives, who's mad enough to say, hey, we could rebuild this. We could do it. Now, I'm a minister. I'm a camp director. I know how to canoe. I know a little bit about building houses, but not that much. But he embarked on this mad journey of rebuilding the house. And he taught me how to do post and beam construction, which is taking big beams and making mortise and tenons in them and fitting these things together so that they're all held together by wood pegs, and the house goes up, and it's like the old style barns were built. It's like think of the Amish building their homes, no nails, and it requires a lot of time and work. And for 6 weeks in the fall, we worked on these beams, cutting the notches and the mortise and the tenons, and I'll tell you a couple things about that. The first is that when sharp tools are sharp. Dan had these big chisels called a slick, about this wide, about 3 inches wide, and sharp. And he handed it to me to shave some of the wood down. He said, it's sharp. I said, I know that. And zoom, right away, blood spurting out of my finger. Because it was sharp. Mad people need to be careful using sharp implements. And I learned how to make these notches for that. The second thing I learned is something I should have learned in high school, and that math, when applied correctly, works. Because we had to put everything up without ever test fitting anything to see if it would work. We had to rely on our ability to see these in these three-dimensional pieces that we're building. And Dan was wonderful at that and very good at it. And when you come by the house, I'll show you a couple places that the math didn't work because I didn't do it right. But we got it. So Dan allowed me to be, and my wife and my kids and a number of friends, to be intimately involved in this new house as it was becoming a home already, much as we were with the old home that had started out as a house. And then the deep part of this, once you accept the truth, once you surround yourself with some mad people, or find the mad people in your life, and then the deep part was the interconnectedness that we found with our communities, plural. Some of the communities are pretty obvious. As a minister in the churches, a lot of churches responded with help to us, which was fabulous. And then people would send me things. A storyteller friend sitting over here made socks, and because I only had one pair of socks at the time. Other people donated clothes, and that was interesting because you could tell the people who knew me and Jill and the people who had extra stuff in their closets and just wanted to do something. So we got these sort of bags of clothes, much of which right onto Salvation Army. But But it was interesting, the first months was not what am I going to wear today, but who am I going to wear today? I think I'll wear a Daniel Carlson vest today and a Jenna White pair of jeans today. And I'll take Nancy's brother's coat with me to work. And that was a wonderful understanding of how community really does enwrap you and care for you when we do community well. We had a group of neighborhood friends who threw a pancake breakfast for us. Our kids all grew up together. And it was at that pancake breakfast held at our church that I was amazed at the depth of my wife's community that I don't get to see. Her school community, the school teams all came out to help serve, and the coaches and the teachers and the parents that she interacts with, and the depth of that was just beautiful to watch and see how a community comes together. I had the opportunity of being at my work, and 4 men show up. And they come and they sit down with me for an hour in my office. And we talk. We don't say a whole lot, but there are 4 men from the Islamic Center in Latham who had come because I knew them from my work at camp. And they came and sat with me and shared in my sorrow and shared the prayers and the gifts from their community with me. Very humbling, very stunning. The depth, the deepness of our lives when we interweave them with each other. And that could go on many, many more examples of the depth of that. We worked on the house. We had people show up, ministers show up to lay flooring. Ministers who, for the first time in years, maybe got to see something constructive out of a day of their work, who never get to see the physical results of their labor. And it's good, though they're not always the best carpenters, just to say that. And so we were blessed. And so I woke up this morning in a house that that is a home. And I looked out this morning, hoping that the real owners don't show up and kick us out because this house can't possibly be ours. I woke up warm on a cold February day, surrounded by mad people, by the deepness of community, and by the truth that we really do live in a world where disasters happen. But sometimes we can avoid the tragedies. And that's the story of my new home.
It's called the split dog. I had me a little dog once. Was the best rabbit hunting dog you ever saw. Well, he was running after a rabbit one day, and some fool had left a scythe lying in the grass with the blade pointed straight up. Well, my little dog was running so hard and so fast that he didn't see it. He ran smack into it, and it split him open from the tip of his nose right straight on down his tail. Lucky thing I saw it happen. And I ran over my little doggy, and I said, oh, no. But I scooped up half of my dog in one hand, and I scooped up the other half of my dog in the other hand, and I slapped him back together again. And then I took off my coat and I wrapped him up in that right quick. I could see he was still breathing, and I didn't want to lose this little doggy of mine, so I went home and put him in a box. And I put him near the stove at night so he'd be warm. And during the day, I brought him outside and let the warm sunshine pour down on him. I was really worried, but I did this for 3 weeks, every night and every day, until I finally got up my nerve to look in that box and see if he was all right. Well, I went over and I looked in, and I saw him start to wiggle a little bit. So I said, oh, Mary, you're on the right track, you're on the right track. I kept him bandaged for another 3 weeks just to be on the safe side. And then one day I was walking along that box, and what do you think I heard? Woof. 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 He barked. Oh, my land, I cried. I took him out of the box. I brought him outside. I started unwrapping him, and in a few minutes, out he jumped. Spry as ever. But, don't you know, in my excitement, I did a terrible thing to that little dog of mine. You know when I put them back together? I put them together the wrong way, too. He had 2 legs sticking up in the air and 2 legs down on the ground. Half of his head was pointing north, and the other half of his head was pointing south. I just looked at my weird dog, and I said, I ruined my little dog. I just ruined him. My little dog was looking at me with half of his tongue going, Lord knows where the other half was, but I think it was down by his tail. Well, I was crying, and he's panting. But all at once, my little dog saw another rabbit. And he took off running after it. And do you know he turned out to be an even better rabbit hunting dog after that? He'd run on 2 legs, and when he got tired, he'd just run on the other 2 legs. My little doggy could run, going and coming. And you know what else he could do? He could bark at both ends. That's the story about my dog.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again,